The coronavirus has hit all of us hard, some of us more than others. For today, tens of thousands of people across the nation are grieving the loss of a loved one. Could be a spouse or a friend, could be a child or a brother, could be a parent or a neighbor or coworker. Regardless, the grief has hit us in the midst of the social isolation, making our grief even harder. Because where do you go? Where do you turn to? There's no group of people that you can run to, no person that can hug you, no gathering of the family or church. There's no wake or funeral. And perhaps you weren't even able to be there when your loved one died. What do you do? How do you make it through? Pivot Family Foundation has produced this series of videos of experts in the field of grief and bereavement to give tips and guidance and wisdom to help you navigate this season, and to remind you of something very simple but very powerful. You are not alone. Though you may feel like you are, you're not. There are people who are with you and who are for you. So thanks for watching, and find encouragement in the days ahead. Now I'm thinking about, this is a short-term situation. At some point, the virus will be, I guess, done away with in some measure, but the isolation will be over, and we'll be able to go back to our routines of sorts of going to work, school, et cetera, et cetera. So this is short-term. Let's talk about the long-term. Do you feel like that people that are going through the grief and isolation will need additional support when they can go to counseling, when they go to support groups, when they can return to life as normal?
Yeah, I think that one thing we'll have in common is that everybody has been through something together. Whether or not they had a loved one die during this time, everybody has a shared experience. And so I have that commonality. But I think that perhaps particularly, I think you're speaking to people who have had a loss during this time, whether it was related directly to COVID or was a death that occurred concurrently with this pandemic, and there were challenges that they faced with obstructions to their expected way of grieving. I think that they'll have some work to do. And not everybody, and I'm not saying that everybody's going to be struggling with post-traumatic stress, but some of us might. Some of us might feel that we're having a hard time readjusting,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
the grief might be in some ways prolonged because of the delay. I think that this is an interesting time. I think when after things shift and we begin to be able to have funerals again and meet with people who we share a loss with and actually make physical contact with those people, I think there's going to be, I'm not sure what it'll look like for us or how we'll feel, but it's going to be a really, maybe in some ways it'll be a celebration that we can reconnect, but also maybe it'll be a sense of I can't think of the right word, but I can picture having experiencing a delayed funeral, and I think that it might be a powerful, expressive time, but because something was held back perhaps for many months, and
Mm-hmm.
finally we have an experience that we've been looking forward to. It might be. We might have a lot of expectations. Some of the expectations might not be fulfilled. We
Mm-hmm.
might have a sense of deep relief that comes out in a way we didn't expect. So I think that we'll need to hold that time with some sense of reverence and see how people respond to those times where we can kind of come out of our shell, so to speak, and kind of get back into the world. I think there's also going to be a lot of caution, because I think that we're so tuned into risk of contagion, and what we're hearing and what's being predicted is that in all likelihood this virus is going to, if it does subside, and it looks like it's perhaps the curve is beginning in many areas to flatten a bit, and it's eventually going to be there'll be fewer illnesses and fewer deaths, there's still going to be illnesses and deaths. There'll still be contagion. And even when it seems like to really flattened out beautifully and there's very rare contagion, it's going to come back. And people are talking about it come back, whether it comes back in the fall, we don't know. We're not going to have a vaccine probably for at least a year to 18 months is what I'm understanding. So we're still in this. And how is it going to change how we relate to one another? We don't really know that yet.
Right.
So it's a lot unfolding. For those people who have compromised immune systems, how are they going to reintegrate with a sense of safety? Those of us who are older, like myself, and we are compromised even just by our age, how are we going to reintegrate into the world, and will we be able to be closer than 6 feet, or will we still maintain distance, and how is that going to affect our sense of intimacy and safety?
Yeah. And I think a sense of flexibility, of like, hey, it's not going to work now. We still have to wait. Just being flexible to the way we will get back into the routines of our flow as a nation and culture will be very, very critical for people.
Yeah.
I want to talk too about once things are back where they were, and they won't ever be what they were, but as things get back to what we call a new normal, I suppose, and people return to their jobs and their work, and they've lost someone, they're in the state of grief, some part of their grief. How should employers respond? What should be their way to help people as they go through their grief, even though it's been months ago?
I think 2 ways come to mind. One is to remember, first of all, one thought is that people might be coming back to work, and a team or in a business where some members of the team and fellow employees have died. So there's a shared loss within the company. There was no, there was probably at that point, there's been no funeral. There was no way for people to commemorate that person. And now they're coming back to the workplace. And I think that it's important for the employer to acknowledge the death in their community, and not do it. I think too often what the choice that's made is to ignore the loss, but I think it's in the minds of everyone. It's the elephant in the living room.
Right.
Acknowledging it and having some kind of commemoration regarding the shared experience. And that can be done by having a meeting with staff and saying, what can we do? What do we feel would be a way for us to acknowledge this person who we cared for, we worked with every day, we saw daily and no longer is here. Even if it was 6 months ago, but we haven't, we're back to work now. Also, some people will not be at work. They may have gotten other jobs. They may have stopped working, may have retired. I mean, the workplace will change when we get back into it. Right. So I think acknowledging the changes are really important in the workplace, and remembering people who are not going to be returning, not necessarily because they died, but because they're no longer there for other reasons. So things will be different, and often the best thing that an employer can do is acknowledge a difference and give voice to it. But now your question specifically is if I'm bereaved and I'm coming back to work, what do I need? And one thing similarly I need going back to work if I'm bereaved is acknowledgement of my loss. What an employer can do, which is a gift to the bereaved person, is to speak perhaps on the phone first, or when people can join physically together again, is to have a meeting initially, perhaps before the startup day. I don't know, things may not be simply startup day. People might trickle in at different points in time, but I'd say have a conversation with the bereaved person, and to express your condolences. Hopefully, there was an opportunity to send a condolence letter, card, make a call prior, regardless of whether you're able to do it or not. This is a time to connect more personally and to express condolences and to say, how can I help you integrate as a bereaved member of our community integrate into the workplace. So have a discussion. Do you feel comfortable with our talking about it? Uh, how are you handling your grief now? Because so often, as we're grieving, we are not as functional for a time.
Mm.
Memory loss, disorientation, all sorts of lack of sleep that interfere with our ability to function in the workplace, perhaps. So acknowledging that this may be a difficult reintegration into the workplace for you, even more so than others, because of you've had a loved one who died,
Mm.
and talking about easing the reentry. Are there, we can consider your job responsibilities and consider how we can help you reintegrate with less stress.
Right.
And one of the things we can do, he or she might say, is we can also call upon some of your colleagues to really work with you to help you kind of carry your load, but with respect and with concern.
Right. So just help them. Oh, go ahead.
Also, so you have the personal conversation, but part of the personal conversation is, would you be comfortable with people while you're at work sharing with you their condolences, or would you rather that they didn't, so you can focus and not be distracted? Because some people just could be overwhelmed by 10, 15 people, or how many it might be, during the course of a workday, coming over and saying, I'm so sorry, and generating sadness and tears throughout the course of the day, and you feel like it's just overwhelming. So it might be the desire of the person to say, let's pace this, or give me a few days just to kind of acclimate myself. But or it might be, yes, I need hugs. I've been waiting for hugs for for how many weeks now? Wow. Yeah, I could take the hugs. So getting a sense of what you need from the poor employer, get that sense, and then says, can I convey this to the team, to the staff, to your fellow workers, of what would be the best way of their supporting you now?
Right. Yeah, that's so helpful. I can see where many people will need that guidance as they move back into, like I say, the new normal of life, and to say, you've lost your loved one. It's okay to move on. It's okay to go back to work. It's okay to continue with whatever your plans were for the summer, fall. It's okay. And grief helps as part of the acclimation to this new normal, because our new normal is not only the world we're living in, but now this new world without my loved one. So that's incredibly helpful. So I want to take a moment to come as we close, is for you to have a moment to just share some encouragement words, final words of advice, and takeaways you would share with people that are right now, as they're watching this, they're grieving a loss and they're feeling isolated. What would you say to them to help them just make one more step forward?
Okay. One thing that comes to mind is, is there any space right now in your wounded heart for gratitude? And I think that there might be. And I speak about this very gently, because very often, I know my wife died 3 years ago, and I'm just looking at the anniversary coming up in a few days, the third anniversary for death. Early on in my grief, it was very hard for me to get in touch with a sense of gratitude, because I felt like my life was, I was so wounded. I was so damaged by this loss that I didn't feel there was anything to be grateful for. And I was so at the same time, I was hearing and reading about gratitude and wondering about it, and where can I find, is there any room in my heart to be grateful? And the more I was open to the possibility of gratitude, I felt that it enriched my life profoundly.
Wow.
And there's always something to be grateful for, I discovered. Whether it be the sun has come out, right, looking out my window, it's gorgeous outside. It's these puffy white clouds and this beautiful blue sky. And regardless of what else is going on, I have that, or it might be the fact that I'm breathing. Alive. I'm grateful for my life. So having some kind of gratitude practice, and starting small. It doesn't have to be a big thing, Some people have a gratitude jar, and they write down each day something that they can write down and really believe that they're grateful for, and putting it in the jar. And sometimes when you're just really in that dark place of despair and really can't see anything to be grateful for, you can go to the jar, and pull out some things that you were grateful for at some point earlier, and say, "Oh yeah," whether it be the birds in your bird feeder, that bring you joy, or when you got outside, and you're able to really just appreciate the spring starting up and the buds on the trees, and the bulbs coming up. Whatever it might be that kind of touches you, and it might be something that's right there, and you're just not focusing on the joy of it, but your grandkids, if you have grandchildren, or your children, or the fact that you're fortunate to have a partner if you have one, or if you don't have a partner, like you're fortunate to have had love and to have had that relationship that brought you so much. So there's a whole realm of ways that we can find gratitude, and another one is that sometimes when we're struggling, and this is a new concept to me, and I haven't really employed it yet in my life, but it was introduced to me by I have a partner now in my life, and she introduced this to me. She has a box that she calls a God box, and when there's something that's so hard, a problem, a challenge, something we're struggling over, we just can write it down and give it to God, put it in the God box.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Something about that is like such a wonderful concept to me. And I'm looking forward to trying to do that, because I think we can puzzle over things and have angst over things that we don't know how we're ever going to get through something. And we always face these things in our grief and just day-to-day lives. And sometimes we can obsess and perseverate on problems, and to write it down and just like give it up,
Yeah.
a little bit. It can be a rich experience and release some of the pressure that we carry around day to day. So those are two things that come to mind for me.
Yeah, that's good. And I like the idea of just releasing, being able to write it out and just release it. There is something powerful about that, for sure. So, well, thank you again for your investment in us. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have talked to you. And I know that people that are watching will watch this will be grateful for the words and the guidance that you've given. It's been so good and so helpful. So, Dr. Rob, thank you for your time with us today.
Bruce, it's been really great talking with you. So you're very welcome, and I'm so happy to have been here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
God bless. Thanks for watching this episode. I'm glad you found some encouragement and guidance and wisdom to get you through this season of life. This coronavirus will one day end, so will the quarantine, and you'll be able to reconnect with family and friends and to find some healing from that personal touch of being with them. You can't change the past. It's permanent and it's gone. But you can choose a new future. You can choose to move forward in your life, which is what you've actually done by watching this video. You've taken a step to find healing even in the midst of social isolation. So congratulations to you. I hope you will share this video with others and help them find the encouragement and healing that they need to. Thanks so much.